What's going on, everybody? In today's video, we are doing a three-parter request. This is for Bob. This is Rush House of Strombo interview. I split it up into 3 parts because it's like 45 minutes long, and and he suggested that I would have done it anyways, but this is the one from earlier this year, from April. That's what we're doing today. If you're new here, please subscribe. Check out my videos, all kinds of videos, reaction videos, bass videos, music videos. Check it out. If you like the channel, if you want to support the channel, all kinds of ways, you can hit super thanks underneath this video. You can hit me direct in the description. I got PayPal, Venmo, Amazon wishlist, mailing address. Oh yeah. And now doing request videos, donation videos. If there's something that you want me to check out, if there's something that you want me to do a video for, something to react to, something to see, if you have a question, whatever, hit me direct, PayPal, Venmo, and in the notes, let me know what you want me to see. Leave a link, tell me, describe, ask away, and I'll make a video. There's not a limit, there's not a bottom price, there's not a top price, just whatever you think. So amazing. So this video is for Bob, who hit me with PayPal and hit me with the yo, check this video out and react to this. This video is part 1. House of Strombo, Alex and Geddy. Let's do this. Bam.
I was looking online the other day and I found an interview that I did with Neil 10 years ago on the 30th anniversary, and we did a track by track on Moving Pictures on the 30th. And it was really interesting because what he said was, this was one of the records for you where you weren't getting as much pressure to be something that somebody else wanted you to be. Like, by this point, Rush was Rush now. And there was a freedom in this record that maybe you didn't have in the first handful. And that this was a record where you got to just be yourselves. Did you guys feel that way as well?
Yeah. Yeah, but I kind of felt like we always were ourselves, but it didn't always work out.
In our minds,
we made a lot of mistakes because we were so determined to be ourselves. And from the minute Neil came into the band in '74, something shifted because his presence was a confirmation of he had a willingness to experiment in the same way that Alex and I had already been, going down that road in a way. So it was like a confirmation. It was like the circle had been closed. And so we kept experimenting. And sometimes we got a little sidetracked, like with Caress of Steel. It's a pretty weird record in hindsight, but...
but I love that record because when I was young and I heard that, it was a metal record. And I heard Caress of Steel and went, that's what got me into the band, was hearing that.
Oh, really?
So in a way, and then of course 2112 became this iconic thing in our life. But Caress of Steel just sounded like, I don't think people can play like this.
Right?
The way you guys did. So it's amazing what felt like maybe a mistake or a sidetrack brought a whole bunch of other people into your fold.
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting time for us. But we kept making our own mistakes and learning from them. And by the time we hit this record, we had a lot of confidence.
But the confidence that comes from making mistakes is different than the confidence that comes from winning all the time. It's a different kind of confidence, right? So I'm not sure you could have made this record the way you did if you hadn't had those experiences beforehand.
You're absolutely right. It's a completely different kind of confidence. This is more stepped. You work your way up. You learn what's the right thing to do. And when we got to this record, it was really that thing. There was a particular energy that was so positive. It was such a fun record to make. We had so much fun in the studio playing. Being up in the studio for, I guess, the second time by then was a treat for us. So we were all in such a good headspace. When we did Witch Hunt, we were down on the driveway by the studio, out in the cold, being the mob, and doing that. I just have such great memories of that. Just we were laughing our heads off, and we were trying to be an angry mob. But if you listen closely, you can hear some of the things we were saying, and it was just a vibe about the whole thing that was so very positive.
We set up microphones on the driveway, and all of us in our crew were grumbling into the mic and screaming absurd things. That was how we created this mob.
For
Overdubbing it over and over and over again, from 8 people, we turned it into an angry mob of footballers.
Another thing that came up in that interview with Neil, the 30th, was how the Witch Hunt lyrics were relevant then. And when you listen to this record today, and it got me thinking, it's like, does anything really change? And I don't know how much it does.
It's so true. And a lot of things that Neil wrote about over the years are as valid today as they were then. And yet they were considered, inappropriate for a metal band to be talking about such things. But is it ever inappropriate? I don't think so.
No, I don't. I never grew up listening to kids' music, and I don't really think that kids should. I know the value of it when you're an infant, but I kind of feel like you have to. I feel like you have to kind of have the trees rattled early.
Yeah.
At least in your mind.
Sparks.
Yeah. Who was that for you? How did because to be independent, to because you could have gone a million different ways from the late '60s into the early '70s. Rush you could have played 20 different genres. You're all different, talented enough. You could have done whatever you wanted. What were the things that you were being exposed to that led you to figure out that this is the way you wanted to be?
That's really a tough question to answer because our influences were so diverse, and so there were so many different bands we loved. Of course, all the early British blues bands really got us started. And we played very much in the style of all those early bands like John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, Jeff Beck, and people like that. Cream, for sure. And then as time went on and progressive rock became a huge influence to all of us, probably less so to Alex than it was to me, but and Neil was very influenced by progressive rock. And then you just start listening to all kinds of things. I was a big Joni Mitchell fan. I liked Paul Simon's songwriting. Al had his own things that he was into. And you brought all these things to the table in Rush. And it was fine, that nothing was verboten as long as we felt we could do it and we could do it authentically. It was fine. And so that's how our style morphed, I guess.
Yeah.
What were your influences then after?
I was probably more in sort of a rock vein, but certainly that progressive music was an influence.
Like were you Zeppelin, Sabbath kind of rock, or?
Zeppelin for sure, Humble Pie, Jeff Beck, but I loved Yes, King Crimson. There was just so much music, but like Ged just said, listening to other things like Joni Mitchell, listening to the crafting of songs and what works and what doesn't work and what really stands out in a song and the pacing and all of those things about the structure of a song. You learn about that through listening. You don't maybe are not directly influenced by the music itself, but how it's constructed and how it works becomes the important thing, I think, and you carry that on forever.
I'm not sure how many people know that you had all these fake bands, right? Like, was it the Fabulous Men? Was that a band that you did?
Yeah, there was a Fabulous Men.
There was a couple of them. Like
these were side bands.
Yeah, side bands. And that you would like create these fake bands in your mind and just let's try to do it like this. Is that how you approach it?
Yeah, well, Fabulous Men were a very new wave.
Yes,
they were fabulous, and they were men.
And I do have the tapes
of the Fabulous Men.
And there are some tapes that shall remain.
Tapes.
We need to hear those. But were songs on here from those kinds of sessions where you took on other...
Well, Vital Signs is a direct influence by the Fabulous Men.
That's true.
There's
That's
no
very true.
doubt about it. Was inspired by our Fabulous Men persona. But
was it just a chance for you to have some fun, or was it actually a mechanism to push yourself?
No, it was fun.
Fun.
And if it pushed us and influenced us, that was accidental.
Yeah.
But fun is contagious. And you want to bring, especially for a band that writes about, quote, heavy topics, if you can ingest a bit of fun in it, that's all the better. Those were fun side things that we did, usually while we were waiting to do our next take, because, as the production staff was fucking around in there, getting sounds or being on the phone or something like that.
For a long time.
You're sitting in there going, can we do this take already? And then you just break out into some jam thing that's how the Fabulous Men got.
You just call it, we're the Fabulous Men now, and away we go?
Yeah, we were just like,
there was one particular phone call that Terry Brown made to his mother in England. And he was on the phone for half an hour. And we were sitting, we stopped the take so that he could take the call. And we were just sitting there and sitting. And finally we started playing. And we actually went through many different genres.
That's right.
In that particular song.
Yeah.
The title of that song escapes me.
Yeah, we remember, but you just won't tell us.
But no, it is a classic.
The point is, you let yourself go because you can't just sit and wait. You're pent up. You're ready to record, and you just start jamming, and you vent your frustration through the microphone.
How much of the guys that you became in those days was directly related to your parents' stories? You know, if you think about metal and rock and growing up in Toronto in that era, it was a very different kind of place than most places in the world. You know, a lot of new immigration here. You were from that. How much was that influencing who you were as songwriters and as performers and as the kind of men you wanted to become?
That's a good question because, you know, those influences are kind of subterranean, you know, they're subconscious. We were playing that kind of music to escape from all that shit, to escape from the home life, to escape from, you know, in my case, a family that was, you know, reassembled post-war and had its fair share of function and dysfunction. So, you know, when
early trauma conversations, right? Like people are talking about trauma, but that was in your home because your parents had experienced some pretty heavy trauma.
Yeah, and you know, Al's, you know, tough working class family. So I think when we got together, it was to escape all that. And music was the salvation. You know, we all dove into music because of that. We wanted to escape into that world.
But we were willing to work hard, and I think it was that work ethic that we learned from our parents. That was, like Geddy said, like,
that's true.
Subconscious work ethic.
But it didn't feel like work.
It didn't feel like work. It felt great, but you were willing to work 24 hours a day on something if you needed to, just to make it as good as you could. You wouldn't think about it. It was a joy.
And it was those words, to make it. You know, you use those words, you thought about that idea, we're going to make it. We didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
Of course not. But if we worked hard enough and we got good enough, we might make it.
Yeah.
And that was our you know, it was our version of running away to join the circus, really.
Right. And then suddenly the circus worked. It's like you made it. However, it became, when did you first figure out?
It took a long time.
It did take a long time, but not that long.
I guess not.
You know, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
You know, we know about the Kiss stories now because they're legendary, but my friend Bob sent me a picture today. It made me laugh. It was a concert ticket it was Rush and the New York Dolls. And it was amazing to see this bill, and I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
Thinking, you played with everybody. You played on bills that probably people think that wouldn't make sense, but
we played on bills that didn't make sense. We opened for Sha Na Na.
Yeah.
You know, that makes no sense.
Yeah, the Sadie Hawkins dance.
Yeah, in Baltimore, and we got booed off the stage.
Screaming at us, so we just turned up.
Of course,
more and
we should have got booed off the stage because they were all dressed like the Fonz, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And here comes this like really loud metal band,
Right.
and they're like, "What
the hell are you
fuck
doing?
is this?" You know. So
Yeah, that's not the right mix.
So yeah, we played. We took every gig that was offered to us, pretty much.
The era of
I saw
building
Sha
your
Na
brand,
when I was like
everybody talks about it now, wasn't really
young.
part of your lexicon back then, was it?
No, it wasn't. It didn't exist really. You know, first of all, we were not a band that got airplay easily.
Right.
We had I guess, in context of the times, it was a crude sound. And we sounded a little bit too much like Zepp and a little bit too much like Humble Pie. So, you know, we were falling through the cracks. So the best way we could make friends and fans was to be on the road and to get out in front of people. So we opened for everybody we could, and we traveled constantly. And slowly, we built a groundswell.
But it was very gradual. I mean, it was really around the time of this album that it all finally came together. There were some tough, lean times, certainly. That period with Chris Steele, but it was a very gradual thing. And that was 6 years right there. Plus, we've been playing together for 6 years before that. Right. So no overnight success. It took its time.
I think it's deceptive when you sit here in 2022 and you look back at a 50-year career and you go, oh, that didn't seem to take so long from the first record to 21. Well, that was just a couple of years. But when you're in that moment, it sure felt a lot longer. And you are experiencing all those difficulties on a daily basis. Like, when are we going? Can we afford to be on the road? There was times and we'd get stranded without gigs, and we'd be staying in a hotel in LA, and we didn't know when the next gig was, and we couldn't really afford to pay the hotel bill, so you just had to beg, borrow, steal money from the record company, tour support, whatnot. And that time lasted a lot longer than people realize, that you were, hand to mouth, tour to tour. And then suddenly things start to change. Fame is a lot easier to get than financial success. Right. So you give the appearance that you're successful, but you're still trying to make ends meet, and you're pouring every bit of profit you have back into the show to make it better. So you don't think about the show in practical terms. You think of it in terms of how can we make it better? So,
and I think people who've never been broke don't really understand that when you're broke, it's a year feels like 10 years, right? It feels like an insurmountable mountain or hill. It feels like it might never end. And it's really, we see this today in the world. It was one thing that I think that maybe why Rush lasts so long is that lyrically and culturally, when people kind of feel seen, even though some of it may seem fantasy based, they feel seen that you're not a good times band. Right, and it's not a good time set of lyrics. Like it's heavy times, and maybe partly because you experience those heavy times.
And you never forget.
Yeah, you'll never really not be that person, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Cool, nice. Yeah, this is obviously a great interview. This is the end of part one. Lots of cool stuff. Yeah. I have seen Strombo before, but it's been a while. It's been a while, and I don't remember offhand who I saw. I don't even remember. I really don't even remember. I have seen him before, but it's been a long time. Very cool. All right, amazing. Excited for part 2 and part 3. Lots of cool questions, lots of good questions, lots of great answers. I like where this is going. Very cool. Amazing. All right. Thanks, Bob, for the request. On to part 2. I'll see you then. Later.